All right, on my recent Star Trek review video for Requiem for Methuselah, someone commented, Aslan Lore commented that they would be interested in hearing my thoughts on 2 episodes of the Star Trek Continues series. That was this labor of love project by fans, that the premise being that it was the further adventures of the original series. And unfortunately, due to CBS trying to rein everything in, it couldn't continue to do any more of those episodes as a result of the Axanar lawsuit and all that sort of thing. I think you're allowed to do like 15 minutes worth of something as a fan production or what have you. But they recreated the whole set, and the whole look and style of it is really good. And beyond that, the structure of the stories is very much in keeping with the original series, music and all that. Some of it comes very much across as a fan project, although Vic Mignogna does a good job as Captain Kirk. And it's interesting, his hairstyle is actually more reminiscent of Jack Lord, who was almost Captain Kirk after they bailed on Jeffrey Hunter and ended up with William Shatner. But anyway, and some of it is a bit of the approach that like the animated series did, where you kind of revisit stories like, I wonder whatever became of those people if they ever went back to that planet or whatever. Because in the original series, the only thing that they did refer to previous stories and whatnot, but the only recurring character really was Harry Mudd. But had it continued, you could probably assume that, there might have been a couple episodes like that revisited old stuff. But there's also some rather original stories in there as well that are very much in keeping with how Star Trek told its stories and all of that. And so there's a lot more in that than you'll ever see in any of the latest Star Trek stuff, and it just goes to show you it takes a certain amount of understanding and respect that is lacking in current Trek. But anyway, so the first one, the episode The White Iris, is one I had not seen. I did see what ships are for, but I rewatched it again because it'd been a while. But the first one, The White Iris, is a follow-up to quite a few episodes. But the response was to the Requiem Methuselah because of Reyna reappears in this episode, as a ghost. Or, the spirit of Kirk's conscience. And that's basically what it is. This is Kirk, his own guilt, and these women that he was involved with, and all of whom had passed away. So, he's had quite a few relationships, and then he walks away. These women, they all died tragically for one reason or another. So he feels particularly bad about them. But it's a go. So he is dealing with his conscience. There's this planet that wants to join the Federation. They have enemies who don't want them to, and so that's kind of the backdrop there. And Kirk gets injured, and they treat him, but they're wondering if the treatment is causing him to hallucinate or whatever. But it seemed to basically remove his ability to protect himself from the guilt that he feels about these women. And this is how he functions. He just had to kind of bury it, whereas this incident makes him confront it, and it nearly kills him. And ultimately, Spock mind melds with him, and he sees the ghosts, possibly suspecting this might have been some, alien invasion of his mind or whatnot. But ultimately, it's just the condition he's in, and he's having to confront something he needed to deal with. Of course, in Star Trek Continues, they introduce a counselor, and so she does it. So you had some of these elements that's leading you into where you end up with Next Generation stuff like, and these are all clever nods to the overall universe of Star Trek and all that stuff. And also you get to see and I think it's pretty accurate. There never was one in the original show, but they're a holodeck for old Enterprise. And it does bear the resemblance of what you probably would have seen had they done something like that. And so it's very nice. He revisits all the different scenes of Edith Keeler, and Mariam. Oh, and Mariam, I'm never, the Indian girl, Mariamni, I think, or Marimani. That's how you say it. I'm thinking of something else too. But there was also one of the ghosts he would see was this little girl. And he's like, well, what the hell's that about? And they're going to go all the way back to when he was in kindergarten or something. No, this girl represented the daughter that he would have had with her had she not died. And so that, there was more of that aspect. But the whole premise of it was about the Iris was that there was this defense shield that the planet that wanted to join the Federation, and they were going to need that to protect them from their enemy attacks. But only Kirk knew the password, but thanks to his injury, he couldn't remember it. And going through all this and confronting his guilt and whatnot as he did, it was revealed that the White Iris was the code word. So later on, McCoy says, I wonder why he picked that. And then Spock said, well, I did some research, and there's the Vincent van Gogh painting of irises, except one's white. And the conclusion of that was that it was a reference to his loneliness. And Kirk is a lonely man. He seems primarily to be incapable of maintaining a relationship with women. And probably because he's terrible husband material, I don't think he'd be the guy to be who wouldn't stray. Because on the one hand, boy, does he love women, but on the other, he loves them too much to where he hurts them because he's loving another one. But of course, it's another one of those classic ways of ending the story where McCoy really, because Kirk was having his heart was literally dying. He was at dropping in certain percentages of capacity. And then McCoy said, well, the one part of your heart that refused to give up, that's the heart that belongs to the real lady in your life. And, of course, Kirk grins, and they both smile about it. And, of course, that's the Enterprise. And that's true. That is the heart and soul of Captain Kirk. His one true love that beats out all the other girlfriends is the Enterprise itself. So it's good in that. Now, at the end of Requiem for Methuselah, there's the scene where Spock uses the mind meld to make Kirk forget about Rayna. We see Rayna very briefly in this, but in the outset where Kirk's suffering from his injuries and he starts to remember that, and he actually sees Spock erasing his memory. So now he remembers all of it. And the question I had was, gee, what would his attitude be towards Spock taking this upon himself? And they have the scene and at the turbo lift where Spock says, well, at the time I thought it was the best thing, And Kirk's too busy dealing with his current ordeal. He doesn't really address it much. And besides, it's kind of the thing, if he could have done it to himself, he would have, because in a sense he did. He buried all this stuff in order for him. That's how he dealt with it. And so in this episode, he confronts all of it. So, well, that's how it's handled. So he remembers Rayna. The only thing about it is like his solution to everything was to go into that holodeck and all that sort of stuff. And none of that is real, but it is his own psychology confronting it and doing it. But it is, who programmed it? Obviously it would have to be him. And that each one says, yeah, I know you did what you had to do and all that stuff. But anyway, overall, very good job. Obviously, they're very good at, even when they have to create something new that looks like it fits right in with the production and sets of the old show. And they even got it right about, they talk about this girlfriend we didn't know about that Kirk had in his earlier years, which was mentioned in the episode of Obsession with when he was a young ensign or lieutenant. I don't even know if maybe he was a lieutenant by then, on the Farragut and all that. And this was some girlfriend he had there. And she's dressed in the uniforms as it would have looked. And when they recreate her scene in that holodeck scene, yeah, it looks like what that ship. They had the little cool looking monitor things. Look like kind of like lamps. I wish they had kept those because they're just so weird looking. But again, that responds to someone who actually understood and knew Star Trek and respected it. Now, on to the other one. What are ships for? What ships are for refers to the old saying of the ship in the harbor is perfectly safe. Nothing will, it's the safest place for it to be. But they're supposed to sail. That's the point. And trying to keep everything isolated and safe is the core of the show. You have these people who live on this asteroid. There's an atmosphere and all that. And then there's another asteroid of people and they're bitter enemies with one another. The other society is failing and whatnot, and they want to move to the other one, but they won't let them. So there's a lot of xenophobia going on. But the interesting thing about the nature of the radiation effects from their star has rendered them incapable of perceiving color. And this is an effect. If you go to so Kirk and crew, they beam down to it and say, oh, they can't see anything in color either. Everything's black and white. Well, guess what's going to happen? So, the leader of the group, he and his wife, they have this adopted daughter, and they're very worried about her. She's suffering from the effects that they're all suffering from of the radiation and whatnot. So that she beams aboard the ship to get treatment. But when she does, everything's in color, and she's never seen it before. But when her skin color is sort of this yellowish color, and her hair is purple. Well, the Enterprise crew looks at recordings of the people on the planet below, and they all pretty much look like human beings. They don't have that color. So then they realize, oh, she's actually from the other race of people on the other asteroid, which they bitterly hate. And there's a battle. They attack them and all this stuff, and the Enterprise has to intervene and all that. But, and of course it said this, if you couldn't see it, would you feel the same way and all that stuff? And then the leader, played by John Delancey, has to confront this. Not only his adopted daughter, one of the people, but his wife turns out to be also one of the aliens, if you will, and all of that. But there's a great conflict, or dialogue rather, between Kirk and Delancey. Which is really good, and it points out that says, look, you're judging him on his bigotry, but in the same way, you're broad brushing him as well and their culture from the outside, which you can't possibly completely understand and get. But of course, Kirk's making the more the logical arguments of the obvious nature here, that it is based on of a bigoted notion. Sure, some of those people might have hurt you, but you can't judge them all on the actions of a few, and that's the lesson. So the question was, was this Q testing the Federation? Well, one could draw that conclusion because it's John Delancey playing the role, and in the overall aspect of how the character of Q grew. That he is this omnipotent figure that was actually playing these parts, and that's how he dealt with Picard and the crew, where they thought he was just this, is a one part evil and then soon, mischievous and whatnot. And ultimately, towards the end, where he's teaching Picard valuable lessons and all this, so that Picard never truly knew what Q's motivations are entirely, because Q is so far removed from humanity and whatnot. So he's speaking to him in the ways that he had to, for whatever the point was, and a part of the growth of humanity and where its place is in the universe and all that. And that's a good take on it, and that is the take when Next Generation comes to a close. I know they're probably going to mess it up in the Picard, but we just won't count that. But that's where it is, and it's actually a really great bookend to that series. So, of course, Q could have appeared to Kirk and crew and all that. You know, he's God practically. You know, he's immortal and all that. And so it would fit in that, oh, he created this person and he's seeing it and he's testing the Federation there to, well, how are they going to deal with this? And let's see how they work that out. And, you know, and so this person who's the leader of this group, an immortal being could do that, you know, all those years, and he's married to this woman and he raised this girl and all just for this moment. But he's an omnipotent force, so it's nothing for him. It's just like, you know, he took a few hours to read something or watch a show. And that's all it is to him. So yeah, it could fit into that. The only problem with the overall thing is that wasn't really planned out. The Q was originally introduced, and a lot of people say, oh, could Trelane be a Q and all this sort of stuff. It's very similar to that type of godlike alien that the Federation would encounter out there. And there is a bit of a problem. In the Next Generation, there is the episode where the Q Continuum stripped Q of his powers. And so he went to, he sought, what do you call it? A sanctuary, if you will. Asylum, like political asylum, what have you, with the Enterprise. And all that stuff goes in. He has made enemies. They come to destroy him and all that sort of stuff. And then in the end, another Q, played by Corbin Benson, on loan from LA Law, shows up and ultimately decides he's learned his lesson. He's learned humility and all that, kind of like Odin sending Thor to Earth. And he gets his powers back. Well, okay, you can argue, well, all of this was also another test of the bridge crew and the Federation and all this sort of thing. And the lesson was really being learned by them, not by Q. And that would be fine to a point, except at the scene where Q is, he passes the test and the Q Continuum restores him. There's no one to witness that. Picard's not there. None of the crew is. He's in the shuttle by himself. All that stuff he learned because he's in the midst of sacrificing himself for the sake of the others. And so he learned his lesson, all that. But the conversation between him and the other Q wouldn't have been necessary because they know it. But then again, I'm just a human being, so how do I know, or they were testing us. Oh my God, Q's real. So that it kind of takes away from it, and it shows that, yeah, it wasn't completely planned out from Encounter at Farpoint all the way to All Good Things and that sort of thing. But it's a better story of approaching, an actual godlike being who is so far removed from you, you're never going to completely understand what it is they're about because they're so far away and so massively large. I mean, one of the great illustrations of that is, it's 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it's the monolith. Well, what does it mean? Well, they're so far removed, it's hard to understand. It's something. There's something there. It's got something to do with evolution, but you're never going to quite fully understand. It's like you're trying to get your pet to come inside. And that sort of thing. And you got to coax them and stuff, and they never quite understand. They know something, and that's the distance between God and man. So, so sure, why not just say that's Q, pulling something on humans again, and that would be perfectly fine. In that, it's just that one episode kind of, that was between Q and Q, and it doesn't fit in with the overall narrative. I suppose you could say, well, both is true. He was in trouble with them and all that, and he was being used by the rest of the overall continuum. How does that even work? Are they actually individuals amongst themselves? They did demonstrate that. There was the girl who was a member of the continuum, and so. That's the only a stumbling block there, but in overall, maybe not that much. So, sure, why not? That was Q messing with Kirk and crew, and what a funny way to go about it, because it also shows this business of social issues and whatnot. Star Trek Continues gets it. Discovery and Picard doesn't. They don't know how to do that. And old Star Trek did it. And Next Generation, of course, were masters at it. And then this show, which is this fan production, does it perfectly fine. And there it is, demonstrating it, and all is laid bare. Quite literally. It's pretty funny when he sees what his wife looks like. So, anywho, there we are with Star Trek Continues. I might do a few more later down the road, time permitting. But so that's my take on those 2 episodes for Star Trek Continues. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.